Hey guys, Joshua here. Eternals dropped in theaters this weekend, the newest MCU movie, and obviously I was pretty excited for it. I'm a massive fan of the MCU. The trailers didn't really blow me away, but a Marvel movie directed by Chloe Zhao, the person who did Nomadland, the movie that won Best Picture earlier this year, and she got directed for it too. That intrigued me, and the mixed reactions came in, and that actually made me more excited since we really haven't had like a divisive MCU movie before, at least not to this degree. So I was pretty hyped for it. I didn't think it was gonna let me down since there are only three movies in the entire franchise that I wasn't really a fan of, and well, let's just get into this. So I'm gonna start off and here. So for the good, uh, this is a very beautifully shot movie. It's very pretty looking. The cinematography, it's not as impressive as everyone is probably gonna make it out to be. It didn't like blow me away or anything, but it looks pretty good, especially by Marvel standards, which they're known for having some pretty ugly cinematography. This is probably one of their best, if not their best. So that's cool. It has some great effects too. So yeah, sweet. And there's this whole massive mythology and backstory to all of this, and I thought it was super cool. It feels like it's a very lived-in world. It has its own sort of corner of the MCU where it has a lot of world building to do, and I thought it was fairly well done in this one. So that was nice. And there are some interesting themes in this movie too, on the morality and all those stuff. And I wish we could have gotten into them more. More on that later, but it was cool that we had that for a movie like this. So that was pretty nice. And the action is well shot. There are a few pretty good sequences involving it. My favorite one was probably the one in the jungle. That was a good scene. The performances are pretty solid. I didn't think anyone did a bad job. My favorite one was probably Camille Nanjiani. I think that's how you say his name. I'm not positive on that, but I think that's how you say. That's he gave the best performance in the movie in my eyes, and this is a fairly watchable movie with some solid things about it that I appreciated, but I was pretty disappointed with it. So let's get into the bad, which where do I begin? My biggest issue with this movie is simply that I just didn't care about any of the characters. None of them were interesting. None of them had any personality except for Kamal Khan. I can't say his name. Nanjiani, whatever the crap his name is. He had a personality, but his character didn't have any depth, and nor does anybody else's. They're just these blank slates, and which was pretty disappointed since this movie had all the time to develop its characters. In fact, I think it took that time that it took to develop its characters. It didn't develop its characters with the time that it took to develop its characters, though. What? Like, why? And so, yeah, nobody just has anything interesting about them. The lead character played by Gemma Chan, I like the actress a lot, and she didn't do a bad job in this movie, but her character just had nothing interesting about her. She had no personality. She was just kind of there. And then Icarus, the guy on the other end of the romance, there was literally nothing interesting about him, and I liked the twist that they did with him towards the end of the movie, but it didn't improve his character at all. Uh, the Kamal Nanjiani's character has some nice comedic relief, but he ends up becoming kind of unlikable with what they do with him towards the end, so that was disappointing. I couldn't tell you a thing about Angelina Jolie in this movie. Sprite, the little kid girl or whatever, is extremely annoying. The guy from Dunkirk does nothing. Brian Tyree Henry was probably the closest they got to an actual character in this movie, but he isn't given nearly enough screen time, so it just kind of comes off as pointless. And I can go on forever with these, but I don't want to go too far with the negatives, so now you're going to hear tons of people talking about how this is groundbreaking, totally different, unlike anything else the MCU has ever done before. Spoiler alert, it's not. Now, I know Chloe Zhao made Nomadland, which was one of the most uniquely made films of the last 5 years. And so people are going to continue that hype and how unique and groundbreaking it is, but it really isn't. I think there was potential for that to be the case, but it just didn't come through. I don't think I fully understand what people are talking about when describing this whole thing. And the basic problem here is I don't think Kevin Feige allowed Chloe Zhao's style to fully come through and for her to totally do what she wanted to do here. It has to stick to the MCU formula. Not right now. It isn't allowed to escape, really. It has to have all the... I'm recording. It has to have all the dumb jokes and all the safe story choices with a giant CGI insanity fest at the end. The third act is so hard to keep track of. I will do my best to avoid spoilers, but I feel like they totally dropped the ball at the end. The humor is very unfunny for the most part, except for Kumail's jokes are funny for the most part, but the majority of the time the comedy falls flat in this movie. And it doesn't fit at all with the tone of this big fantasy epic that Chloe Zhao wanted to do. She wanted to do probably a more artistic, unique MCU movie, and I would have loved to have seen that. But because this has to be an MCU movie with the things that are always in the MCU, I just feel like it hurt this story quite a lot. I mentioned that this film has some strong and interesting themes. Of course it doesn't get to explore them. Why would it? There are some interesting philosophical ideas brought up, but this film just scratches the surface of them. I think the problem is that some of these ideas are very scary to debate about, and whereas you can do that sort of thing very easily with a villain, with the heroes you might be afraid that the audience would be sort of alienated by it and find it too psychotic, so they kind of chickened out with the whole thing and just skim past it, and because of this, I think the themes never really get to be developed, and the ideas are never explored properly. I'm usually not too fussed about this sort of thing, but it angers me more here because I feel like there was such strong potential here, and it just didn't come through. The film takes quite a while to get going, too. The villains are generic and forgettable. Way too much exposition. The directing, honestly, doesn't come across as all that special, like I said, and aside from some of the action sequences and visuals and stuff, while there were elements of this movie that I did like, it just didn't work as a whole for me. So, to my conclusion here, I can probably go even further on the negatives, but I just don't want to be too negative. I don't want to give the impression that I hated this movie. I didn't. It's mildly entertaining. I liked some elements of it. I just wanted to love it, and I'm honestly not even sure if I liked it or not. It's the first time in a long time where they put out a film that was mediocre. I knew 4 MCU movies coming out in the same year. 4 of them. One of them was going to disappoint, but I never thought it'd be Eternals. I'll definitely rewatch it to see if I like it more, but until then, I thought this was the most disappointing movie of the year. I'm feeling I'm going to piss off a number of people based on how high the audience score seems to be, but to be fair, this is also dividing a ton of people too. I'm sure there's lots of people that want to rip my bones out, and then a bunch of people who agree with me, but I don't know. There's going to be a large number of arguments involving this film, and if YouTube allows there to be a comment section, I'll probably see that. watch the film and form your own opinion. I only really recommend it to diehard MCU fans. I'd give it a C plus and like a 5.5 out of 10. It's a movie that exists. I wish that, well, I guess I'm glad it exists, but I didn't really like it. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.